Welcome back, everybody, to Flight Path. It is so fun to be back. My name is David, CEO and co-founder of Tern, joined as always by Brad, our head of design, and Molly, our head of product. And this is the weekly podcast where we cover everything that we have kind of got done this past week in terms of products that we've shipped, events that we've been attending. So if you're a Tern user or you're thinking about becoming a Tern user, we think this is one of the best ways to stay up to date with everything that has been going on. We'll kind of talk about our weeks here in a second, but I'm in Vienna recording this live at the ASTA River Cruise Expo. And it's kind of been fun how many people have come up and be like, Tern is evolving so quickly. They're listening, they're adding features, but sometimes it can be hard to keep up with everything. And I'm like, well, you should subscribe to the podcast because this is a great way, 20 to 30 minutes a week, sometimes 40 minutes a week, where it's like everything that we've got done. So this is actually the first time that I've been like able to see Brad and Molly this week. So how are you two? Molly, how are you? Let's start with you. How's your week been? Catch me up in your life. Like, how are things?
I've had a great week, actually. Few highlights. Well, we shipped a lot of products, which is always really fun. So we'll talk about that later. But a few other really fun highlights. We launched this feedback survey on our approach to how we're thinking about building invoicing. And we had 81 advisors respond with detailed feedback.
Wow.
And that's like crazy. And it was overall really positive. And then there was also just a few things that it was like, oh, quick wins we could add to our approach to solve for more people. So just so helpful. Thank you to our community for engaging so deeply as always. I like know how amazing our community is. And then I just get blown away like every week with new things. So that was great. And I also got to meet a user for coffee. So I was on a feedback call with her a few weeks ago, and we realized we're like 10 minutes from each other in Michigan. So we decided to meet up for coffee and kind of talk shop about Tern, which was really fun. And then the final update, which I think is the most shocking of all, is I left the house 3 times yesterday, which is like more
Wow.
than I've done in the past 2 months. So I'm like exhausted, but it's good to leave the house. That's always fun.
That's incredible progress, Molly. That is like I saw that on the agenda. I was like, wow, like that is really impressive.
For most
Um,
people, it wouldn't be notable, but for me, it's incredibly notable. So I think I had to mention it. So,
I mean, I feel like when you work from home 3 times actually is like a fair amount of like in and out, right? So like I,
yeah.
I think we'll give it to you. And the invoicing thing is so fun. Like again, had somebody come up to me a couple hours ago just being like, we need invoicing. I'm like, it's like shipping very soon. And you always kind of get that look like, oh, I've heard that before. I'm like, no, like really soon. Like just trust us. But Brad, how's your week been? Do you
Uh,
miss the host role? Do you want? Are you? I mean, I'm kind of feel like I'm stepping on your toes here after last week.
well, I think you're doing excellent, and you should keep doing it for as long as I never have to again. We've been good. It's been, like Molly mentioned, just kind of a wild week. We've shipped a bajillion things. We're also planning for a bunch of projects that are coming up that are all in like very different spaces. Like Molly mentioned, invoicing, but we have some like integration work that's very different. We have some like I don't know if you can talk about it. AI things happening. So like there and like that just requires a ton of context switching throughout the week. So it's both felt incredibly productive with shipping, but then also like I've just been bouncing all over the place and haven't accomplished anything, which is a weird feeling. But I was also going to talk about the feedback survey before Molly threw it in here. I was also blown away. I think just for folks who don't know, like we often do this in design, like we'll often, try and get user feedback, right, throughout the course of building a product. And often, especially when building consumer products, you like send out a survey, maybe get like 1 or 2 responses, then you're like, okay, we'll send it out again and offer people $50 to fill out this survey in hopes that like they'll tell us how they feel and what they need. And instead, there's like Molly mentioned, 80 people who didn't just say like, yeah, this is good, but like detailed line by line feedback of like what they need, what's working, like what are the things we're not thinking about yet. And just so incredible to be able to have that resource and like have that support when building this to make sure we get it right, when we actually build it instead of launching it and then having to come back and be like, oh, we missed all these things because no one would tell us what they actually need.
Wow. That is so cool. And I was kind of skimming some of the kind of survey results, and it's like people are opinionated about what needs to be in the invoice, which is like, it's really fun to kind of see how much detail there will be. And I think that's going to be really fun to kind of be able to execute on that. It's also, I was kind of joking before we clicked record here. Like, I do like these podcasts on weeks like this in particular because I feel like it's a great opportunity for me to catch up on everything that's happened over the past 5 days. I said this kind of in the intro, but Katie and I are in Vienna for the ASTA River Cruise conference. We attended this. It was actually the first ever conference that we attended after we had started Tern. So there's obviously the kind of origin story, original ASTA that we went to in September of 2022. But the first actual conference ever was Katie and I kind of showed up as like basically like stealth registrants. We didn't have a booth. We were presenting at the Budapest conference 2 years ago. And it was like 600 advisors. And we kind of walked away being like, we are way too early to be here. It doesn't make sense. And then we saw it got bigger last year. This year is almost 1,700 people at this event, and it is insane. The trade show this morning has just been slammed. So it's been kind of fun kind of prepping for that. And then before Monday, or kind of Friday through the past Tuesday, we took some time to do a road trip around Austria. So it's like been kind of fun. Like stayed in a bunch of different towns, have some great recommendations for little like B&Bs and places to stay if people are interested. So it's been a good week, but I'm excited to kind of catch up on everything that we've shipped because it's like been a lot and it's hard. I'm not going to take it personally that we leave and a bunch of stuff gets done, but it's okay. I think we're going to start with forms. Brad, tell us about some of the major updates that people have been asking about for forms that are live.
Yeah, and to your point there, that are live. So we have a bucket of things that have already shipped and a bucket we'll talk about later of stuff that's coming. So some things that have already shipped. You might notice there's just some small UI details that are starting to get moved around and shifted to feel more like the rest of the product. For context, forms was like one of the earlier features we built. We haven't touched it in a while, so it existed before some of like our more standard design system, as we call it. So there's some little polished things in there, not much that you'll notice. But then we also added some other pieces that Molly's going to talk about.
Yeah. So one big one, when we first launched passport parsing for forms, it was like blew people's minds. People were really excited that their clients could just, upload a passport. It would parse out all the fields without them having to enter all the passport details. But for some reason, date of birth wasn't available in the service that we were using. And so it was actually like a top voted feature to add date of birth to passport parsing. And we double checked and it actually was available now through the service we were using. So we added date of birth. So now when clients upload a passport, it's not going to be missing that one key piece of detail that you need for that information. So that's great. And then the other big thing is giving you more control over required fields for your contact information forms. So we started with just the basic details element. Now you can toggle things like email, preferred name, middle name, I think are the three, between optional and required. So you have full control there. It's also now easy for us to do this for other form elements. So if you have other requests that you want more control over, like the individual fields within those elements, just let us know and we can kind of knock those things off as quick wins over the next coming weeks. And never fear. So I'll talk about this a little bit more later, but we have some like big plans for the trip request form too. And I'll talk about it more later, but some of the stuff that we're doing now is a good foundation for that. So more to come later in the podcast.
And I'll just give a shout out to I was like, I don't know if anxious is the right word, but like when we talk about like let people choose which fields are required, I was just like, how are we going to do that in a way that actually like feels manageable? And as I was catching up, I saw the kind of UX that got shipped early this week, and it was like, oh, like that's super easy. Just like here are the checkboxes, and like you can just pick for all the fields and like which ones you want required. So, Brad, I assume that was you, but like shout out to you for figuring out how to make that not feel super overwhelming and confusing. Because in my head, I was like, this is going to be really complex, and it's actually not.
Do you want to, Brad, give a little behind the scenes look? Because it was harder than you might expect to do that with how forms are architected. So that might be interesting just to share.
Yeah, and I will say I haven't had my coffee this morning, so I'm going to do my best on this. But we might need to call in Spencer, our backup, to give the actual engineering take. But yeah, just the way some kind of like pre-built elements in forms work today or have worked in the past is like you could pull in something like contact details, which has multiple fields as part of it. And what you could do before is say like, is this kind of section required? like, do you need to submit contact details as a whole? But there was no way to configure individual pieces within that. And so we still need to think about like, okay, how do we handle this so that you can kind of decide, is this thing required as a whole? Like, do I need to collect contact details? And then also which details do I like need to enforce are actually collected? And so we had a bunch of different explorations we were doing, like, where do we put these checkboxes to make it clear that like some things are always required and some things you sometimes can choose between. So there was a little bit back and forth, and actually spent some time like pairing with one of our engineers, like actually kind of live coding some things to say like, oh, it'd be easy to do this, might be harder to do that piece. Like we found something that worked pretty well, both from a UX side and from the engineering side.
And yell at me if I'm lying here, but isn't it also that the actual like element itself shares code with the client facing side, and so we have to like fully lock it down? So that's why you're seeing like the checkboxes right below it, versus like in line within it, which was our original design. So yeah, there was some also just like engineering trade-offs that we had to work through.
Yeah, and as we dug into that, so just for context, what Molly's talking about is like when you're building a form, you see the fields that your client will fill out for like traveler details. That's kind of like the same component behind the scenes to what your clients will actually fill out on their end. So if we were to like jam a checkbox in the middle of that for your view, we'd have to like then hide it on the client view. And as we thought about it, we're like, actually, it doesn't make sense for there to be a checkbox in the middle of that, because the intent of that feature is to show you what it will look like to your clients.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be confusing. You're like, wait, is this required checkbox visible to my clients? Like, should that be here? Is that a part of the experience? So by separating those things out, we can more explicitly say, this is the preview, and this is your configuration options.
So cool. And like, I love the little behind the scenes too, right? Because it's like, I even looked at that, not knowing all of the kind of creative, and I was just like, oh, that's like a really nice implementation of that. And there's tons of complexity that goes into making it feel that accessible, that approachable. So very interesting and very cool. And I think it's just all this polish. I mean, I think, Brad, you're kind of teeing this up, right? You said like forms was one of the earliest features. I remember it was like, I think October or November 2023 that we did that. And it was a big deal. It was one of our first kind of like non-itinerary features. But we really hadn't found, like you said, the brand voice, brand style. So it's like really cool to be able to go back now and kind of like really our product style, maybe I should say, and kind of go back and be able to polish that. And the other thing I'll say,
I think when I joined, it was like a week later, the webinar on forms. Like I think
was
like,
it?
Yeah. And I was like trying to wrangle getting it like fully shipped. It was like chaos. Yeah.
That sounds like classic Tern onboarding. Be like, hey, welcome to the company. We've got a week for you to figure out this thing before we announce it to 1,000 people.
Yeah.
I love that, and I'll also give Brad some props because I'm in Austria. I was like, and we have our exhibit hall that starts in like 30 minutes. I was like, can we do this at like 8:30? And so just bright and early there on the East Coast. So thank you both for getting up and recording at the start of the day. We've got some other big wins to talk about. We kind of made it through forms. We're going to come back to that in a minute and talk about what's coming because we're not done with forms. But Brad, do you want to kind of talk about some of the work that we've been doing on commission improvements?
Yeah, for sure. And so there's two like smaller things that we added to commission for agencies over the last week. So one of them now is when you are logging a supplier statement for commission, when you're actually going to enter and say, I got this check from a supplier, I got this payment, I'm going to break that out into individual line items to pay out commission. Now you can also attach that file that you're actually referencing when you're breaking out all those individual items. And today that's great just for your record keeping so that you can have it all in one place. So if you need to reference later, like, oh yeah, what was that statement? Like, where's the actual like source of truth from the supplier? You don't have to go dig through a folder somewhere on your computer to find it. You can just find it right in Tern. The cool part about this is that longer term, we won't commit to a specific timeline. Our goal would be so that actually becomes kind of the first part of that flow. Like you upload the file and we just pull all the information out for you. So we have some big ideas there. Of course, like as we continue to work on AI, you might see this come to life. But by adding that in there today, we can like already make that part of the product that you're used to doing, like uploading that file. And then it also gives us some ability later when we go to actually test this and make sure this works when we're rolling it out. for us to reference some of those files for different suppliers and say, oh yeah, like this, we can see what a commission looks like, a statement looks like from Disney or from whatever supplier, and like confirm that will work with our parsing tool eventually, in order to actually make that super easy for you all. So excited about that. I know David is nodding his head aggressively because any mention AI.
It is. I mean, it's even take the AI out of it, right? I mean, I think like we hear this from agency owners all the time, right? Like the mental overhead of like every supplier being different in terms of how they send you that information and the look and feel. And so basically what we're saying here is like by having examples, like Brad said, like we can train Tern on how to just read these statements. And like at some point, like once we have enough data and there's enough training, like it can just figure it out for you, right? And it can do that with a level of accuracy that if you don't have all the examples to test on, then you can't do it. So, really, this kind of idea of like, how do you have examples to teach the system is such a core part of actually enabling these efficiency gains that we get really passionate about. And so this does feel like a little thing, but it's a little thing that, as Brad mentioned, is like such a big gateway to a much, much bigger efficiency gain down the road. But it'll take us a while. To Brad's point around timeline, like these technologies are kind of interesting in that you don't really know how much data you need until it's enough, right? And so that's one of the things that will be a little bit of an unknown on our side. It's just like how long does it take us to get there? But stay tuned.
Yeah, maybe just to make sure people aren't spooked by the idea of like training based on their commission statements. It's not like the actual data in the commission statement is used for any sort of, it's purely like formatting. It's like, how's the commission statement structured so that we make sure that the like parser can pick up on that structure and format things correctly when they pull it up. So no, like not using your data to train anything, to like predict anything about what commission you'll be receiving, like nothing there, just purely on the formatting side.
And very similar to how we do things with trip import today. So just to make it easier to save you time parsing out the trip details and adding them to the itinerary. So you can think about it very similarly to that.
Yep. And then one other small thing on commissions is we added another adjustment type of recall. So previously we had like bonus, fee, and other, I think were the only three. So we got recall now. If there's more that you need, let us know super quick for us to throw those in there and add them. And yeah, just give us a note and we'll make sure we get those added in over time.
So cool. And like, I do love, I mean, it's just a good example, right, of those like quick wins, right, where it's like as they come up, right, sometimes things are bigger projects and it's not always easy, I think, for people to predict what's a big project versus a quick win, but like those like field adjustments, we may ask questions, right, we may debate it internally because like we don't want to have like 400 fields. It just becomes really confusing. But like if you do have those kind of quick ones that just are obvious and just make sense, like please let us know. And speaking of kind of fields and data, we've also made some changes to getting data out of the system, right, Brad?
Excellent transition. Yes.
You like that?
Yeah, we also added a few more columns to the export for contacts. So now if you're looking at your contacts and you try to download them or like export them, you'll also see their phone number listed in there. The way that will work is if they have a primary phone number set on the contact, it'll pull that number. Otherwise, we'll just take the first one in the list if they have multiple. And then we also export loyalty programs. And so that is on its own column. It's a semicolon separated list. Basically, it's like you can have multiple loyalty programs. So it's one column with however many loyalty programs they have on their contact profile all listed in one space. And that's super useful for if you need to like upload this to another marketing platform or another platform and target based on those fields, or if you need to reference their phone number somewhere else. I think Molly, you were going to talk a little more about that piece.
Yeah, I mean, I think over time we would love to make it less necessary to have to do that. I think one of the things that we hear a lot in turn is that, you know, people would love to be able to not only communicate with their clients about like trips and upcoming dates and stuff easily, but also market out to potential clients and existing clients about, you know, here's a trip that I'm planning that, you know, matches your interests and things like that. So marketing in turn is something that we would love to add, I think probably towards the back half of this year. And whenever you get that far out, you know, grain of salt that. But we want to make it easy, and we'll never remove the ability to export contacts. But over time, we'd love, in the spirit of consolidating systems, to make it less kind of necessary to do that and just to kind of cover all your core workflows within Tern.
Got MailChimp in our crosshairs, right? We'll just build that. Should be no problem.
I mean, you built kind of a marketing tool at Handshake. Yeah. This is something you know how to do.
Yep, that is correct.
That is correct. No problem. So next week then, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just kidding. Please don't send us emails. It won't be next week. But yes, that is, I think, very exciting, right? Think about the marketing, thinking about like, how do we not just help make you more efficient in the, kind of end-to-end management of the trip and with your existing relationships, but like growing the funnel and like really taking advantage of those leads, finding new leads. Like there's just so much really cool stuff that we can do there. So stay tuned for that. Who knows? Maybe more to share on the users conference. No commitments, but maybe. Anyway, moving on before I get in trouble. Collaboration. Should we talk about that, Molly?
We should. We ship so many things. It's crazy. So collaboration, we made some really big progress here. The first thing just to talk about is, feedback that we kind of consistently get is that while collaborating on trips and contacts is really powerful today, there are still some key missing workflows that people need. And so, some of the trip planning tabs, for example, some of the contact tabs where you can, run automations on contacts or access trip documents, like those sorts of things, are currently only available to owners. So you'll notice like a bit of a pattern over the next few weeks. Our goal is to unlock every single tab so that whether you're an owner or a collaborator, you kind of have the same, edit abilities and view access regardless of your role. That's our goal. And so we did make a lot of progress here this week. So now on both contacts and trips, everyone, if you're a collaborator or an owner, you can access the notes tab. You can add notes, delete notes, edit notes. So that's just a great way to kind of collaborate on those things. If you need to add a contact note, because one, advisor has context on it and their agency owner can see it, same with on trips. So that was huge. And then we also unlocked the authorizations tab on trips, which kind of consolidates all the statuses of payments and credit card authorization across the trip. So you could already access authorization information like on individual itinerary items, but you didn't have that summary view as the collaborator. So now you do. So that's another big step forward. And like I said, over the next coming weeks, kind of each week, we're hoping to unlock like a few tabs. And then ultimately, like I said, everyone should be able to really see and edit everything. And then the other thing that I almost even forgot to mention, just because there's so many things to talk about, is contact reassignment. So today, like basically in Tern, whenever there's new contacts created, they're auto shared with your default agency. If you're within an agency as an agent, or if you're collaborating, closely with another advisor, you can kind of just add that person as a collaborator. And so you both have access to that contact. You can add them to trips and anything you need to do. But there was no way to actually reassign the ownership of the contact. And this was especially important if, for example, the contacts are agency owned and an agent leaves the agency, or they have to transfer ownership for whatever other reason. Maybe the agent's at capacity and they no longer and it no longer makes sense for them to be like the main point of contact for that person. So we introduced the ability. It's very similar if you're familiar with how it works for trips, just to transfer the ownership of that contact, just like you already could for trips today. And really all that means is like you're the main point of contact. As of right now, you have like more access to the contact, although again, over time, we're hoping to kind of reduce that difference. And it's also a foundational need for something coming soon, which is the ability to import contacts at an agency level and mass assign out agents as owners, and then also reassign ownership in bulk. So that's coming very soon. That's going to be a really exciting one. And this was an important foundation to that.
So cool. And I think just this whole idea of collaboration, I think already are pretty far ahead in terms of like how all these different kind of constituencies, whether you're an agency owner, whether you're a virtual assistant, like you can actually work together in real time on a trip. But the few edge cases that Molly sort of alluded to there are like, yeah, but they like can't quite do everything that I need them to do as a virtual assistant or as an assistant because they don't have access to this tab, right? Or like notes is such a good example. I think this is like an underappreciated thing that we shipped this week is like just sharing context on the different conversations and calls and touch points you've had with somebody. We already had emails, so you can start to see emails across the contact. And now just being able to be like, hey, here are my notes from the call, and have your assistant see that so they can go then call the hotel and like share everything that hotel needs to know based on those notes, I think is like huge. So as this continues to kind of roll out and we get more and more comprehensive in terms of the collaboration, I think this is going to unlock huge efficiency gains for those folks that are working across multiple people, whether you're a team, whether you have an assistant, whether you're an agency owner that needs to step in for somebody. Like this really does make planning travel kind of a multiplayer experience, which I think is really cool. So fun to see that. And then of course, some of the different things in terms of like making switching easier, because now you can have one import that covers the whole agency, right? There's just things like that this is really going to enable that I think will be game changing. Wow, you all did get a lot done this week. I mean, woo, I'm tired just talking about it. How but we're not done. So we talk a little bit about sneak peek into next week. Brad, do you want to start? What's happening with forms? What's next?
Yes, and next week is not the last time we'll preview more forms things. There's more coming even than this, but what you'll see next week is, for the first time ever, the ability to collect more information per traveler on the trip request form or on group sign up form. And what this means is we will cut out, hopefully, the requirement for you to like collect an initial basic set of details and then send a follow-up form to each traveler that actually lets you collect things like passport information or loyalty programs or whatever the details are you actually need to book that trip. We're going to make it so that you can embed those things right within that trip request form or the group trip sign form. Quite complicated behind the scenes on like how we do this, because we're taking two different concepts and basically saying, hey, can you just put that form inside this other form and let you fill it out multiple times? Like that seems easy, right? Just do it. There's a lot of work we need to do. But
and keep track of who it goes to and all these things. But I think this is where we insert the like hallelujah music, right? Because I mean, this is going to be like so game changing for people. I know. As I said, this is where we need like an actual.
Is like, so we've added the more granular ability to like toggle email required on off, and you know the other fields within the contact basic details. That contact basic details will replace the concept of traveler basic details. So it'll have all the same fields. Don't worry, nothing with your forms will break or change, but you will also then have those checkboxes available to you within the trip request form. So never fear, like right now you're only seeing those more granular like permission checkboxes on the contact info form, but those will also be present as of next week within trip request.
That's so cool. And it is like, I mean, I think Jade mentioned this on last week's podcast, right? But like literally having just gone through this with our users conference, like we have felt the pain where it's like every single person's got to fill out another form and that just goes away, right? And you think about how much time that saves you, how much chasing and babysitting that saves you as an advisor, and how much more seamless and streamlined it makes it for your client. Like this is an update. I'd say it's like we didn't do it originally, or for the past 18 months since forms have been out, because it was so complicated and kind of messy, and like figuring out both the engineering piece and like the design piece on how these things go together in a way that doesn't feel overwhelming is like hard. But now that we are addressing it, it's going to be like pretty fun.
Yeah, it's also been, let's just say, we've talked in circles a few times, like making sure we've understood all the details. Like Molly, Spencer, and I on the call being like, wait, didn't we just get to this thing? Like, let's go back, start over, let's make sure it makes sense. So yeah, I think it'll feel really simple on the UX side, both traveler and the advisor side, but there's a lot of confusion internally just to like make all the pieces make sense to get it there.
Yes. Okay, so stay tuned on forms. Hopefully some exciting things to share there. And I feel like there's one other thing that we're working on. What could it be? I'm not excited about it at all. Molly, what was that again?
If you have watched previous podcasts, you know what we're about to talk about, which is AI, because it's David's favorite. Yeah, so I think what's pretty cool over the coming months is that we're going to be devoting some serious, engineering time to some of these more exploratory efforts to integrate AI more into Tern. And it's always in the service of what are the things that advisors are having to spend so much time on that are not really the best use of time, right? Where you want to be selling, you want to be developing personal relationships, curating like the really personalized trips, and what are those things that are super repetitive, data entry, that we think AI can help, automate and solve for. And so the next few weeks, that's going to be kind of the first project of many actually that will be rolling out. And our goal for the next few weeks is to improve some of the biggest areas of opportunity we've seen with our current AI assist, which is making it easier to import data or build trips, especially when thinking about importing data from other systems. So things like when you actually import an itinerary, not retaining the photos or not retaining full descriptions. And I think what's interesting with AI is that it looks a little different than other projects we typically work on, where it's more that we share the goals and ideas that we have with engineering, and they kind of go off and do what we call spikes, which is really just research and investigations and testing things to see what's possible. So it's like harder to say this is what we'll accomplish with it, but we know like the types of things we want to, but until actually engineering starts playing around with it, we don't even know what will be possible. So it could be things that we're not even imagining yet. But our goal is to make kind of porting data from other systems easier and getting that into Tern for the next few weeks. And then in the coming months, even more beyond that.
And I think, I just generally, I think this is going to be really exciting. I mean, we kind of, even at the trade show here, like talking about just how many hours the existing iteration of Tern AI Assist has saved people. And it's, kind of staggering. Like it's close to 15,000 hours at this point, which according to Malcolm Gladwell means like you could be an expert plus have an extra 5,000 hours based on the time that we've been saved. But so I think that's really cool. Taking that to the next level is going to be really exciting. But then I think the learnings from this kind of like updated model and approach, I think will unlock hopefully a lot of this, kind of AI integration, if you will. But one of the things we talked a lot about too that sort of goes hand in hand with this is that it's not just how do we plug AI in everywhere, but it's also taking that opportunity to say, like, how do we simplify Tern, right? And how do we make this feel easier? How do we lower the cognitive overhead that goes along with this? So, I know Brad in particular has been thinking a lot about like what is the UX updates that kind of pair with AI to really lower this cognitive load that goes into planning a trip in Tern? Because we do hear from people like Tern is incredibly powerful, but there's a learning curve. And there will always be a learning curve, right? Especially when you're consolidating multiple different systems into a platform that's trying to do everything. But thinking through like, how can these new technologies combined with taking everything we've learned so far and kind of polishing the UX side really lower the barrier to entry to Tern and make this really accessible? So that's why I'm so excited about it. And stay tuned. Hopefully we'll be previewing some of this in the not too distant future. And I think hopefully we can do a sneak peek at the Las Vegas Travel Agent Forum. So if you're going to be there, hopefully we'll have a little something to show, or at least a teaser of what to come. So that'll be fun.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say I think maybe the other thing on my mind here is like, I think we've all used products where it feels like the product's just like AI, and it's like tacking it on to places that you just don't really care about. And so like, just like anything else in Tern, we're really rooting it in the things that we hear over and over our pain points today. As you mentioned, David, we're starting with the UX and how to simplify and streamline first. And then we're figuring out how do we layer on AI to kind of supercharge some of those workflows in a way that feels very intuitive for advisors. Like it should almost feel just a natural part of your workflow for the key places that it will truly be a game changer, and then not feel intrusive beyond that. And so like finding that right balance is going to be kind of key to doing this well, because I think there's lots of examples of AI working really well in products, and then there's kind of equally or maybe more examples of it feeling just like kind of this tacked on, like for the sake of having an AI type of feature. So we're really trying to of course, meet the former. I'm sorry, Brad, totally interrupted you.
No, we're good. The thing I was just going to yes and what David was saying about lowering the barrier to entry. I think that often sounds like, oh, if I'm new to Tern, like that's helpful for new people, but won't be helpful for me who's already a Tern user. And just want to like reiterate that actually it's not just the barrier to entry, but it is like when you're trying to jump in Tern and get something done, like we want that to be snappy. We want you to be able to get there, get it done, and like get out to do whatever you need to be doing, not be spending time like clicking through a bunch of tabs or like navigating through a table to find. So like, it's not just new people. It's like basically any workflow you're doing today, we're going to be digging into that and saying like, oh, when you need to just go like update a confirmation number on a booking, what does that look like? How do we get you there really fast? If you need to mark something as paid or like just like take care of an authorization, how do we get you there really fast and get that done? So like there's a big picture of things here that I think you'll see a bunch of it in the next couple of months that we're just really excited to get.
If you need to add a city guide, I mean, how do you do that really quickly?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think just again plussing what Brad said, which is like some of what we build will be, I think, what you as listeners are thinking about when you think of AI, right? Which is like, you know, we've all now seen the different chat-based experience and all these different things, right? Some of it you'll be like, okay, that's AI. But yeah, there's also these like really interesting use cases for AI that don't feel like that, but that unlock, as an example, like language-based search in a way that's like really powerful, right? And like again, like who knows if that'll be one of the first things we build or not, but like those are the types of things that we're trying to think through. Is not just say like, okay, how do we wedge a chatbot into Tern, but say like, okay, like how can the breadth of this technology that really allows people to use natural language to communicate with software, what benefit can that bring in speeding this workflow up, right? And so I think it's going to be fun. I think this will be a multi-year journey for us. It's not like, you know, that this is going to be all complete right away, but like I think we'll do a pretty significant investment over the next couple months to sort of like go from 1 to 25 on this, and then, you know, it'll be a consistent theme and way that we think about building products. So exciting. Any closing thoughts here before I go back to another 3.5 hours of trade show? But any updates? Any other thoughts, parables, fun stories? Molly?
A joke. I was going to ask you what the units on that 25 were, like 1 to 25 miles per hour, kilometers. Like, what do we got going on here?
Centimeters.
Okay.
No, it's not big enough. Let's do meters. Meters is better. We're going from 1 meter to 25 meters in 2 months. So it's actually
you're first.
Oh, yeah. So what's the percentage progress per day then, David?
100%.
Okay.
Don't do the math. Wow, this is what happens when we do this across so many different time zones. I think it's just the jokes. We can need some. We'll practice the jokes for next time. We'll do better in the script the jokes. Okay. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, everybody. That's this week's Flight Path. If you have comments, questions, fun stories, you have feedback on our jokes, put those in the comments. But go ahead, like this. Don't forget to subscribe so you get the notifications when these go live every Friday afternoon Eastern Time. Thanks for tuning in to Flight Path. We will see you next week.